From the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, 'Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God.'" The Gospel of the Lord. So I don't often use props for homilies, and I'm not going to today because I thought of this one a little too late, but I'm going to tell you so that 3 years from now I might remember to use it. Imagine right here a spray bottle, right, filled with water, and I spray it up into the lights, and you see the mist, and then it disappears. Just use your imagination. But last night all I could find was spray bottles with cleaning products in them, so I decided. Where does the mist go when you do something like that? It disappears quickly, and, it's as if it was never there in the first place. And, it's a helpful image because what's helpful for our understanding and just setting the stage for, the rest of the readings that we hear today is that in the first reading from Ecclesiastes, we hear this word vanity over and over and over again. And in our day and age, vanity kind of has this connotation of, having to do more with what other people think of us rather than what it had to do with in its original context. And originally, this word hevel was this word that described a vapor or a mist or a breath. So, vapor of vapors, breath of breath, hevel of hevel. All things are hevel. All things are just going to disappear, right? It implies in this context that at the end of your life, all of these things that you do within it, your work, your learning, your toil and labor for earthly possessions, are in a sense going to literally disappear from your life when you die, which is inevitable. Death is inevitable. Those who seek justice in their lives welcome death as a freedom from toil and misery. But those with an insatiable greed, a desire for more, fear death as, at the very least, the deprivation of the good that they've seen or accumulated within their life. So Jesus directly addresses the man who first requested his help. Right? The man who says, "Tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He addresses him personally, but then he turns and directs the parable to the whole crowd. Right? And he makes no distinction between the rich or the poor here. Because Jesus isn't going after the wealth itself. He's not saying that the wealth itself is bad, but the greed and the desire for more and more and more within our lives. The desire to take in rather than the desire to give. Or even just the inordinate desire for wealth is what he's going after. Now, these 5 points to follow, which I have to tell you that I borrowed from a wise priest of the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., Monsignor Charles Pope. I've got to tell you that because I've told some people that I read his blog, and he's really good, so I'm not plagiarizing a homily, right? Anyway, if you have wealth, right, you might already understand these 5 points. And if you don't have wealth, we can still see how an unhealthy desire for it can lead us astray. And to help illustrate that, understand that a while back I had a sort of a thought experiment, right? While I was driving down the highway and I saw that the Mega Millions jackpot was $550 million. So what would that be like to win a $550 million jackpot as a priest? You can call it a temptation if you want. I'm sticking with a thought experiment. But the first point is really, who initiates the wealth in the first place. Right? The text says that there was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He's not first and foremost responsible for it. Right? Whatever we have comes from God, and that's just a simple illustration about it, that it's not the man who's responsible for it. I even think about imagining winning the lottery. I won the lottery, right? I won. Or wasn't given to me. The second point is the inconvenience that wealth can bring. Right? The man asks himself, what am I supposed to do? I don't have enough space to store all my harvest. Right? The man has this burden on his hands because of his wealth, and it's because he doesn't consider giving it away as an option. Generosity is not an option for him. Play out that winning the lottery scene again, right? You can take it in for yourselves. I know you thought about it. Win the lottery. If I won the lottery, how would I distribute it? I'd probably put it in an endowment so I didn't, spend it all. And I'd only give away the interest. Think about even that, like, oh my gosh, what a burden to think about. Like, I don't want to spend too much of it. Like, that's absurd. The third point is the illusion that wealth brings us. So the parable goes on. The man said, this is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry. What's the trouble here? Is that having this wealth, we have this illusion of self-sufficiency, right? There's almost this desire for power that, and not even necessarily in a terrible way to start, but a desire for power to be able to have better control over our lives. Right? We begin to rely more on our own self and our riches than on God. I think sometimes how much easier would ministry be if there was an unlimited amount of resources. But the problem is riches can buy us out of temporary troubles, but wealth can't help with the central problem we face. No amount of money can buy someone's conversion of heart, nor can it postpone our appointment with death and judgment. The fourth point is the insufficiency of wealth, kind of similarly connected. God says to the man, you fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? So the illusion of wealth gives way to the reality that it's not enough. It's not enough in what matters to God. Just having the money isn't enough, to do great ministry. Having the money isn't enough to lead a truly great life, to do God's work. And Jesus' instruction follows. Thus it will be for all who store up treasure for themselves but are not rich in what matters to God. Again, wealth itself is not the trouble, but it's the greed and the inordinate desire for more that is sinful and gets us into trouble. Greed can cling to wealth unreasonably and excessively, and even dream about winning the lottery or obtaining wealth in whatever way. But God says, store up treasure in heaven. Store up treasure in what matters to God. What should be most important to us? We talk on a parish level about things like evangelization, youth ministry, family ministry, worship, education, doing the works of mercy. And on a personal level too, it's all connected. What matters to God is that we be rich in justice and mercy and love, holiness, and the truth. And that we be generous sharers of what He's given us, what He's bestowed on us, both spiritually and materially. It says, share generously above what we do not need. And really, greed is rooted in fear, but generosity trusts that God will not be outdone. Not in a prideful way, but it's almost like a contest. God says, what will you do? And I'll do you better. In the end, what can we do? It doesn't matter if we already have wealth or, we desire more, if we don't have wealth. What's the remedy that Jesus is inviting us to? Well, part of it is just recognizing that the end is coming. And when we do leave this world, from our lives lives, all of that we have is going to disappear. So in a certain sense, we're called to number our days, to look forward to the end in a certain sense. Like I said, those who are generous and seek justice look forward to the end as a freedom from their toil and labor and misery. Know that the end will come and invest in the world to come. Offer your labors to God. All that you do. I think about even just the simple act of making a morning offering. And then at the end of the day, looking back at what you've done and experienced and accomplished and saying, yeah, God, I bet you God was appreciative of that. Or that other one, you know what, that was for me, not for God. It's a simple way on a day-to-day basis to evaluate, am I laboring for God in every day of my life, or am I working to accumulate for myself? But on a practical level too, the practice of tithing is something that really reorders the entirety of our lives. First of all, it obviously reorders our spending. But when we give, when we really strive to give a tenth of what we have, no matter how much we do, to God first, it leads us to really focus on what we need. It leads us to focus on what we need. And we'll still have what we need after we do that and want for less. And really invest in the life to come. Jesus' words to the rich man, or about the rich man, that God reaches down and says, "You fool, tonight your life will be demanded of you," are pretty harsh. But at the same time, it's the reality of what God knows to be the experience of human life. And it's meant to really shake us a little bit that God would say such a thing. "You fool, tonight your life will be demanded of you," and what's going to happen to all of this stuff? He says it to wake us up a bit and really encourage us to invest in the life to come. So let's respond to Jesus' invitation, which was to all of us, wealthy or not, to order our priorities in spending and labors in all things, to invest our lives in the world to come so that we might experience the freedom from our labors and the true joy and freedom that He offers us in that life.